Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a cliff, staring into an abyss so vast it seems to swallow light itself. In your hands is a fragile thread, the only thing tethering you to something precious but painfully heavy. It's not just any weight, it's everything you've ever loved, feared, or clung to. Your identity, your past, your dreams, your pain. Letting go feels like stepping off that cliff, surrendering yourself to forces beyond comprehension. But holding on, that means dragging this unbearable burden with you everywhere you go, until one day the strain becomes too much and the thread snaps anyway. Now ask yourself, what if letting go isn't about losing yourself? It's about finding who you truly are. This paradox haunts us all, though we rarely confront it head on. We live in a world obsessed with attachment. Attachment to people, possessions, ideas, even versions of ourselves that no longer exist. Society tells us to hold tight, to fight for what matters, to never give up. And yet, deep down, you know there's something suffocating about this relentless grip. Every relationship you refuse to release, every grudge you can't forgive, every dream you keep chasing despite its emptiness. These things don't just weigh you down. They distort your reflection in the mirror of life, making it harder to see who you really are beneath the layers of clinging. But here's the unsettling truth. Letting go doesn't guarantee freedom. Sometimes, when we let go, we lose pieces of ourselves. Parts we didn't realize were tied to those threads. A friendship ends, and with it goes your sense of belonging. A failure forces you to abandon a lifelong ambition, leaving behind shards of self-worth. Even forgiveness can feel like betrayal, as if releasing someone else's guilt erases your right to justice. So how do you navigate this razor-thin line between liberation and loss? How do you unshackle yourself without unraveling entirely? Think about the last time you tried to let go of something important. A toxic relationship, a career path that wasn't working out, a belief system that no longer aligned with your values. Did it feel liberating, or did it leave you hollow, questioning whether you'd made a mistake? Maybe both sensations coexisted, creating a storm inside you that refused to settle. This internal conflict isn't random. It's wired into the very fabric of human existence. To let go is to confront uncertainty, to step into the unknown without assurances. Yet staying put, holding on with white-knuckled determination, often leads to stagnation, resentment, or worse, self-destruction. Why does this act of release feel so impossible? Why does it seem easier to carry burdens than to set them free? Is it fear of emptiness, fear of forgetting, or simply fear of change? Or could it be that our attachments aren't just external, they're reflections of inner wounds we haven't healed? When you cling to someone who hurt you, are you actually clinging to the hope of redemption? For them or for yourself? When you chase a dream that's slipping through your fingers, are you running towards success or away from failure? These questions cut deeper than surface-level advice about moving on or letting go. They demand more of you. They demand honesty. And yet, buried within this struggle lies a profound opportunity, an invitation to transform. Because letting go, done consciously, isn't about erasure. It's about creation. It's about choosing which parts of yourself you want to preserve, nurture, and grow. It's about realizing that while some losses may feel permanent, they also make space for new beginnings. But first, you must face the hidden problem beneath your inability to let go. The psychological chains, philosophical dilemmas, and societal pressures that keep you trapped in cycles of attachment and suffering. So now, consider this question carefully. What are you holding on to, and why won't you let it go? What you're holding on to isn't just a person, an idea, or a memory. It's a fragment of your identity. That thread in your hands, it's woven from the fabric of who you believe yourself to be. And this is where the real problem lies. Letting go feels impossible because it threatens not just what you have, but who you are. To release something external often means confronting an internal void, a gap where certainty used to reside. This fear of emptiness runs so deep that most people never even acknowledge its existence. They mistake their attachments for strength when, in truth, these ties are symptoms of a deeper insecurity. Psychologically speaking, human beings are wired for attachment. From infancy, we form bonds as a survival mechanism. Without connection to caregivers, communities, beliefs, we wouldn't survive. But over time, this instinct becomes distorted. The same drive that once ensured our survival now imprisons us. Carl Jung understood this paradox better than anyone. He spoke of the shadow, those parts of ourselves we suppress or deny because they don't align with the image we wish to project. Our attachments, then, aren't just external. They're projections of unresolved inner conflicts. When you cling to someone who no longer serves you, you're clinging to a version of yourself that exists only in relation to them. Letting go requires facing the shadow, and few are willing to do that. Nietzsche took this concept further, arguing that much of human suffering stems from our inability to accept impermanence. God is dead, he famously declared, not as a statement about religion, but as a reflection on humanity's crisis of meaning. In a world without fixed truths, we grasp at anything stable, relationships, careers, ideologies, yet none of these can bear the weight of eternal significance. Nietzsche called this impulse the will to power, the desperate attempt to impose order on chaos. But true freedom, he argued, comes not from controlling the uncontrollable, but from embracing life's inherent uncertainty. Letting go, therefore, isn't weakness. It's an act of radical courage. Schopenhauer offered another lens through which to view this struggle. He believed that all human desire arises from a fundamental dissatisfaction with existence itself. We chase after things, love, success, material wealth, only to find temporary relief before the cycle begins anew. Schopenhauer saw this endless pursuit as a form of self-torture, driven by what he called the will. Attachments, in his view, are manifestations of this insatiable will. To let go would mean silencing the voice inside you that constantly demands more, more, more. But how can you silence something so deeply ingrained? Modern psychology echoes these philosophical insights. Attachment theory teaches us that early childhood experiences shape how we relate to others and to ourselves as adults. Those raised in environments marked by instability often develop anxious or avoidant attachment styles, making it difficult to trust either intimacy or independence. Meanwhile, cognitive biases like loss aversion explain why letting go feels so threatening. Humans are hardwired to prioritize avoiding loss over pursuing gain. Even when holding on causes pain, the brain perceives letting go as a greater risk. This biological predisposition makes the art of release feel unnatural, almost rebellious. Societal forces compound this issue. In a culture obsessed with productivity, achievement, and constant progress, letting go is framed as failure. Social media amplifies this pressure, bombarding us with curated images of perfection. Every post reinforces the myth that happiness lies in acquisition, in having more followers, likes, possessions, accomplishments. The message is clear: to let go is to fall behind. But this relentless push forward leaves little room for reflection. As Aldous Huxley warned in Brave New World, societies built on consumption and distraction inevitably strip individuals of their autonomy. By valuing external validation over internal fulfillment, we lose sight of what truly matters. Existentialists like Jean-Paul Sartre and Viktor Frankl add yet another layer to this complex web. Sartre argued that humans are condemned to be free, that every choice carries the burden of responsibility. When you hold on to something toxic, you abdicate this responsibility, outsourcing your sense of self-worth to external factors. Letting go, then, becomes an assertion of agency, a reclaiming of your freedom. Frankl, however, emphasized purpose. A Holocaust survivor, he observed that those who endured unimaginable suffering often did so because they found meaning in their pain. For Frankl, letting go wasn't about rejecting hardship, but transcending it. It was about choosing how to respond, even in the face of despair. These thinkers reveal a common thread. The root of our attachment problem lies in our relationship with impermanence, uncertainty, and meaning. Whether viewed through the lens of psychology, philosophy, or sociology, The challenge remains the same. Holding on provides a fleeting illusion of control, while letting go demands faith in the unknown. And faith, as history has shown, is rarely easy. Letting go ripples through your life in ways you might not anticipate. Each thread you release sends waves through the intricate web of your existence, touching places you didn't even know were connected. This ripple effect is neither wholly positive nor entirely negative. It's complex, unpredictable, and often paradoxical. While you might expect freedom or relief after releasing what weighs you down, you may instead find yourself confronting truths you weren't prepared to face. When you let go of someone, a partner, a friend, a mentor, you don't just lose them. You lose the shared history, the inside jokes, the dreams you built together. You lose the narrative you constructed about who you are in relation to them. At first, this feels like liberation. The burden lifts, and for a moment, you believe you've reclaimed yourself. But then comes the quiet ache, the realization that part of your identity was entangled with theirs. Who are you without them? What stories will you tell now? This void doesn't fill itself overnight. Instead, it forces you to rewrite your story, piece by piece, until you become someone new. And though this transformation can be liberating, it's also disorienting, leaving you questioning whether the person you're becoming is still authentically you. On a societal level, the act of letting go disrupts patterns far beyond individual lives. Think about how cultural norms shape our attachments, from consumerism to relationships to ideologies. When one person chooses to step away from these systems, however small the gesture, it creates friction. A woman leaves her high-powered corporate job to pursue art, rejecting the myth of success defined by wealth. A man ends a toxic friendship, refusing to normalize emotional abuse. A community abandons tradition in favor of progress. Each decision challenges the status quo, forcing others to confront their own complacency. The ripple spreads outward, destabilizing structures that once seemed unshakable. While such acts of rebellion can inspire change, they also invite resistance. Society punishes those who stray too far from its prescribed paths, labeling them reckless, selfish, or naive. The unseen consequence here is isolation, but also the potential for connection with others brave enough to follow suit. Neurologically, letting go triggers shifts in brain chemistry that mirror grief. Dopamine levels drop as familiar rewards disappear, while cortisol spikes in response to uncertainty. Your mind craves stability, so it clings to old neural pathways, replaying memories and scenarios long after they've ceased to serve you. This biological inertia makes letting go feel like swimming against a current. Even when logic tells you it's the right choice, your body rebels, flooding you with anxiety, sadness, or anger. Over time, though, new pathways form. Resilience builds. But this process takes patience and courage. Few anticipate the toll it takes on both mind and body, mistaking initial discomfort for failure rather than growth. Cognitive biases further obscure the true cost of holding on versus letting go. The sunk cost fallacy convinces us that investing more time, energy, or emotion into something will eventually yield returns, even when evidence suggests otherwise. Confirmation bias blinds us to signs that it's time to move on, reinforcing our attachment by filtering out dissenting information. And hindsight bias tricks us into believing we should have known better all along, amplifying regret when we finally do let go. These mental traps keep us tethered to what no longer serves us, prolonging suffering under the guise of perseverance. Perhaps the most insidious consequence of failing to let go lies in its impact on authenticity. Every attachment carries expectations, both external and internal, that shape how you present yourself to the world. When you hold on to something past its expiration date, you conform to those expectations at the expense of your true self. You wear masks, play roles, suppress desires, all to maintain the illusion of continuity. Letting go strips away these layers, revealing vulnerabilities you'd rather hide. It exposes contradictions within you that demand resolution. And while this exposure can feel excruciating, it's also the gateway to genuine self-discovery. Breaking free isn't just defiance, it's an art. To let go consciously requires rethinking the foundations of your existence, challenging societal norms, psychological conditioning, and philosophical assumptions. This rebellion isn't violent or destructive. It's creative. It's about forging a new path, one step at a time, even when the terrain feels unfamiliar and treacherous. The first step is recognizing the difference between healthy attachment and toxic dependence. Healthy attachment enriches your life. It connects you to people, passions, and principles that align with your authentic self. Toxic dependence, on the other hand, drains you. Identifying which threads to cut begins with radical honesty. Ask yourself, does this relationship empower me or control me? Does this belief system expand my perspective or limit it? Does this goal reflect my deepest desires or someone else's expectations? These questions aren't easy to answer because they force you to confront uncomfortable truths. But without them, you risk mistaking dependency for loyalty, fear for love, and stagnation for stability. Once you've identified what needs to be released, cultivate detachment. Not apathy, but mindful non-attachment. Ancient philosophies like Stoicism and Buddhism offer invaluable insights here. The Stoics taught that suffering arises not from external events, but from our judgments about them. By learning to differentiate between what you can control, your thoughts, actions, reactions, and what you cannot, other people, circumstances, outcomes, you gain the power to detach emotionally from outcomes. Similarly, Buddhism emphasizes impermanence, teaching that clinging to anything inevitably leads to suffering. Practicing mindfulness allows you to observe your attachments without judgment, creating space to release them gently rather than forcefully. This practice extends beyond individual relationships to broader aspects of life. Consider how many of your daily habits, routines, and rituals are driven by unconscious conditioning. From scrolling social media to consuming news designed to provoke outrage, much of modern life revolves around stimuli engineered to hijack your attention and emotions. Breaking free from these patterns requires intentional disruption. Start small. Delete apps that waste your time. Set boundaries around digital consumption. Replace passive entertainment with active creation. Each tiny act of rebellion chips away at the structures keeping you trapped, gradually restoring your autonomy. History offers powerful examples of those who broke free from societal constraints to forge their own paths. Take Henry David Thoreau, who retreated to Walden Pond to live simply and deliberately, rejecting the materialism and conformity of his era. Or Simone de Beauvoir, whose existential feminism challenged traditional gender roles, paving the way for future generations to redefine what it means to be human. More recently, figures like Greta Thunberg embody this spirit of rebellion, refusing to accept the status quo and inspiring millions to join her cause. Their stories remind us that breaking free isn't solitary work. It's often catalyzed by community, solidarity, and shared vision. Building this new foundation requires resilience, a muscle strengthened through consistent effort. Letting go doesn't grant immunity from future attachments. Life will always present opportunities to cling, to hold on, to resist change. The key is developing the ability to recognize these moments and respond with intention rather than impulse. Cognitive reframing helps here. Instead of viewing loss as deprivation, see it as opportunity. Instead of fearing emptiness, embrace it as fertile ground for reinvention. Each time you practice this shift in perspective, you reinforce your capacity to adapt, evolve, and thrive. Ultimately, breaking free is about reclaiming authorship of your life. It's about realizing that while you can't control everything, you can choose how to interpret and respond to the world around you. This realization transforms letting go from an act of surrender into one of empowerment. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance and start becoming the architect of your destiny. And in doing so, you unlock a level of freedom few ever experience. Letting go, at its highest level, isn't about subtraction. It's about dissolution. It's not just freeing yourself from attachments, but transcending the very notion of separation itself. This is the ultimate truth. The self you've spent your entire life trying to define, protect, and preserve is an illusion. You are not the sum of your experiences, achievements, or relationships. You are not confined by the narratives you've woven or the roles you've played. You are fundamentally part of something vast, infinite, and indivisible, a cosmic dance of interconnectedness that defies comprehension. To arrive at this truth requires surrendering not just external possessions or relationships, but the ego itself, the construct that defines you as separate from everything else. The ego fears annihilation, so it clings desperately to distinctions. I am this, not that. I belong here, not there. I succeed, I fail. But these divisions are artificial, created to navigate a fragmented world. They serve a purpose, yes, but they also imprison you. Letting go of the ego doesn't mean ceasing to exist. It means expanding beyond limitation. It means stepping out of the narrow confines of identity into the boundless expanse of being. Science points toward this interconnectedness. Quantum mechanics reveals a universe where particles influence each other instantaneously, regardless of distance, suggesting that separateness is an illusion. Neuroscience shows how empathy and mirror neurons allow us to feel another's pain as if it were our own, hinting at a shared neural basis for compassion. Ecology teaches us that ecosystems thrive through interdependence, not isolation. Together, these disciplines paint a picture of reality far richer and more mysterious than the fragmented worldview most of us inhabit. When you integrate this understanding into your daily life, everything changes. Relationships cease to be transactions. They become expressions of mutual belonging. Work becomes less about achievement and more about contribution. Time loses its linearity, replaced by an eternal present where past and future converge. Even suffering takes on new meaning, seen not as punishment, but as a doorway to deeper awareness. Pain, loss, and uncertainty no longer threaten your sense of self, because you realize there is no separate self to threaten. There is only the unfolding mystery of existence, and you are both participant and witness. As you stand at the edge of this revelation, take a moment to breathe it in. Feel the weightlessness of knowing you are both everything and nothing. See the beauty in the paradox, the poetry in the contradiction. Know that letting go doesn't mean losing yourself. It means discovering the boundless essence that has always been yours. And now, ask yourself one final question. If you are not the person you thought you were, who or what are you becoming? Thanks for watching. Be sure to comment, like, share, and subscribe.